I'm Maria, 28 female. I live in a quiet suburban town with my husband, Liam, in a small house that we're slowly making our own. By trade, I'm a textile conservator, a job that requires patience, a steady hand, and a deep reverence for history and the stories woven into fabric. It's a quiet life, a happy one, but it was shattered by the one person who was supposed to welcome me into her family. This is the story of how my mother-in-law took the most precious thing I owned, destroyed it out of jealousy, and how I used my own meticulous skills to unravel her life in return. Before this story unfolds, I'd love to connect with you. Please let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is in your corner of the world. It's amazing to see how far these stories can travel. The dress wasn't just a dress. To understand the depth of my mother-in-law Brenda's betrayal, you have to understand what that gown represented. It was the last, most beautiful thing my mother ever made for me before she passed away from cancer 5 years ago. My mom was a seamstress, not by profession, but by passion. Her hands, nimble and sure, could turn a simple bolt of fabric into a work of art. For my wedding, she had poured every last ounce of her fading strength and boundless love into creating a masterpiece. She started designing it the day Liam proposed. We'd spent weekends huddled over sketchbooks, my mom's pencil flying across the page, her eyes sparkling with a joy that defied the illness consuming her. She chose the fabric herself, an ivory silk charmeuse that flowed like liquid moonlight and a delicate chantley lace with a rose pattern that mimicked the ones in her garden. For 6 months, the gentle hum of her sewing machine was the soundtrack of our lives. I'd come over after work and find her in her sewing room, surrounded by pins and patterns, a soft smile on her face. Each stitch was a promise, a prayer for my future happiness. She'd sewn tiny, almost invisible seed pearls into the lace on the bodice, each one representing a year of my life. 23 pearls for 23 years. She finished it just a month before she died. The last time I saw her truly smile was when I tried it on. Standing in front of the mirror, I wasn't just a bride-to-be, I was a living testament to my mother's love. The dress fit me as if it were spun from my own skin. It was classic, timeless, and it held the very essence of her. Wearing it on my wedding day felt like she was walking me down the aisle herself. Liam cried when he saw me, and I knew he understood. He knew it wasn't just a garment, it was my mom's final hug. After the wedding, I had the dress professionally cleaned and preserved. I stored it in a special archival box in the climate-controlled closet of our spare bedroom. It was my most sacred possession. My job as a textile conservator meant I knew exactly how to care for it, how to protect its delicate fibers from light, humidity, and time itself. It was more than a keepsake. It was the centerpiece of my history, the tangible link to the most important woman in my life. My mother-in-law, Brenda, had always been difficult. She's an event planner, a profession that perfectly suits her personality, controlling, obsessed with appearances, and convinced that her taste is the only taste worth having. From the moment Liam and I got engaged, she'd made her disapproval of the dress known. She wanted me in something modern, something from a designer whose name she could drop at her country club luncheons. She wrinkled her nose at my mom's sketches, calling them quaint and a bit dated. She'd even tried to book an appointment for me at a high-end bridal boutique behind my back. Liam had to step in and firmly tell her to back off, that the dress was non-negotiable. Brenda had smiled sweetly, apologized for overstepping, but I saw the flicker of resentment in her eyes. To her, my dress was a symbol of my family, of a world outside her influence. It was a beautiful, handcrafted piece of love in her world of sterile, store-bought status symbols. It was everything she wasn't, and she hated it for that. She had her own wedding dress, a ridiculously overwrought meringue of a gown from the 80s, preserved in a giant frame in her hallway like a hunting trophy. She saw my dress not as a tribute to my mother, but as a rejection of her own values. Despite our history, I tried to maintain a fragile peace with her for Liam's sake. He was her only child, and he loved her, even if he was often exasperated by her behavior. His father, David, a retired professor, was a kind, quiet man who mostly stayed out of his wife's social machinations. He adored Liam and was always warm and welcoming to me, but he had long ago learned that steering clear of Brenda's warpaths was the easiest way to keep the peace. So I smiled at family dinners, endured her backhanded compliments, and kept my distance. I thought that was Inu. I never imagined she was capable of such calculated cruelty, that her petty jealousy could curdle into something so vile. I certainly never imagined she would target the one thing she knew I could never replace. The dress was safe, I thought. It was a memory, a legacy, locked away in its box. But I had underestimated the depths of her malice. I had no idea that she wasn't just resentful, she was plotting. The call came on a Tuesday afternoon, about a year after our wedding. I was at the museum, meticulously restoring a 19th century tapestry, a task that required my full concentration. My phone buzzed, and I saw Brenda's name flash on the screen. I almost let it go to voicemail, but a nagging feeling told me to answer. "Maria, darling." Her voice was unnaturally sweet, like cheap perfume. "I hope I'm not catching you at a bad time." "I'm at work, Brenda, but I have a minute. Is everything okay?" "Oh, everything's wonderful. You know my annual charity gala is coming up, the one for the Children's Hospital? Well, this year's theme is a night of nostalgia, and we're all supposed to come dressed in a costume from a significant moment in our lives. Such a fun idea, isn't it?" I made a noncommittal noise. Brenda's fun ideas usually involved a lot of work and money for everyone else. "Anyway," she continued, her voice dripping with faux sincerity, "I was thinking about what to wear, and I had the most brilliant thought. My own wedding dress is far too, well, you've seen it. It's a museum piece. But yours, Maria, yours is so timeless, so elegant. I was thinking, and please, darling, feel free to say no, but would you possibly consider lending it to me? Just for the one night. I would be so incredibly careful with it. It would mean the world to me to represent my son's wedding." It was such a happy day. A cold dread washed over me. I felt my stomach clench. "My dress, Brenda, I don't think that's a good idea. It's preserved. It's not meant to be worn again." "Oh, darling, don't be silly. It's just fabric. I'll be the picture of caution. I'll wear it for a few hours, everyone will see how beautiful it is, and then it'll go right back into its little box. It would be such a lovely gesture, a real symbol of us being a family." The word family was the bait, and she dangled it expertly. Every time I set a boundary, she accused me of not trying, of not wanting to be part of the family. Liam was always caught in the middle, begging me to just make a small concession to keep the peace. I could already hear the conversation with him later. "Mom was just trying to connect with you, Maria. It would have meant a lot to her." "I don't know, Brenda," I stammered, my mind racing. "It's incredibly fragile, and my mom, she made it for me." "And that's what makes it so special," she chirped, cutting me off. "It's a family heirloom. Heirlooms are meant to be shared. Please, Maria, it would make me so happy." I felt trapped. If I said no, I would be the difficult daughter-in-law who wouldn't share. She would paint me as selfish and cold to the entire family and all her friends. If I said yes, the thought of anyone else wearing that dress, especially her, made me feel physically ill. But what could happen in a few hours at a charity gala? She would be on her best behavior, surrounded by people she wanted to impress. Surely, she wouldn't risk damaging it in public. My logical mind battled with my gut instinct, which was screaming at me to say no. Against my better judgment, my desire to avoid another massive family fight won out. "Okay, Brenda," I said, the words feeling like ash in my mouth. "You can borrow it, but you have to promise me you will be extraordinarily careful. It cannot be stained, it cannot be torn. Nothing." "You have my word, darling. I'll treat it like it's the crown jewels. Thank you, you won't regret this." Her voice was triumphant. I felt like I had just signed a deal with the devil. That weekend, I drove the dress over to her house. My hands trembled as I lifted the archival box from my car. Liam had tried to reassure me. "It's just for one night, honey. Mom knows how much it means to you. She'll be careful." But his words felt hollow. When I opened the box to show her the dress, Brenda's eyes had a strange, greedy glint. She ran her hand over the silk, her painted nails coming dangerously close to the delicate lace. "It's even prettier than I remembered," she said, her smile not reaching her eyes. I carefully explained how to put it on, how to handle the delicate zipper, and the tiny pearl buttons on the cuffs. I reiterated, again and again, how fragile it was. "Yes, yes, I understand," she said dismissively, already picturing herself as the belle of the ball. "Don't you worry your pretty little head." The night of the gala, I was a nervous wreck. I asked Liam to text his mom for a picture, but he said we should just let her enjoy her night. A week went by, then two. I call Brenda to ask when I could pick up the dress. "Oh, darling, things have been so hectic," she said breezily. "I'll have it dry cleaned for you and drop it off next week." "No," I said, a bit too sharply. "Don't dry clean it. It requires specialized cleaning. I'll handle it. Just let me know when I can get the box." Another week passed. My calls went to voicemail. My texts went unanswered. Finally, 3 weeks after the gala, Liam got a call from his dad, David, asking if we could swing by. When we arrived, Brenda wasn't there. David led us to the guest room. On the bed was the archival box, but it looked wrong. The lid was slightly askew, and there was a dark, ugly smudge on the side. My heart hammered against my ribs. With trembling fingers, I lifted the lid. The dress was stuffed inside, not carefully folded. It was a crumpled, tragic heap of silk and lace. A huge, dark red stain, unmistakably wine, spread across the bodice. A long, jagged tear ran down the side of the skirt, as if it had been caught on a nail and ripped with violent force. And the lace on the sleeves was shredded, the tiny seed pearls my mother had sewn on were gone, ripped from the fabric. It wasn't just damaged, it was destroyed, it was a corpse. I let out a sound I didn't know I was capable of making, a raw, guttural sob of pure agony. I sank to my knees, cradling the ruined fabric. The smell of stale wine and something earthy, like dirt, filled my nostrils. This didn't happen at a gala. This was desecration. And I knew, with a certainty that chilled me to the bone, that this was no accident. The drive home was a blur of tears and suffocating silence. Liam was horrified, alternating between apologizing profusely and promising that his mother would pay for the damages. But his words were meaningless to me. No amount of money could fix this. The dress wasn't just torn, its spirit was broken. My mother's final gift, the embodiment of her love, had been treated like a rag. When we got home, I laid the dress out on my large work table in my home studio, the one I used for my own conservation projects. The clinical, overhead lights revealed the full extent of the horror. There were grass stains on the hem, smears of mud. The wine stain on the bodice had been scrubbed at, aggressively, which had only served to abrade the delicate silk fibers and set the stain deeper. The long tear in the skirt was violent, not accidental. And worst of all, the delicate Chantilly lace on the sleeves was in tatters, the threads pulled and broken. This wasn't the result of a clumsy mishap at a party. This was deliberate, malicious destruction. Liam called his mother immediately. When he finally got her on the phone, I could hear her saccharine, dismissive tones even from across the room. "Oh, it was a terrible accident. Someone bumped into me and spilled their drink. And the tear, I must have caught it on a chair. I am so sorry. I told you I'd have it cleaned." "Cleaned, Mom, it's ruined," Liam yelled, his voice cracking. "It's shredded. What on earth happened?" "Don't be so dramatic, Liam. It's just a dress. Maria can get a new one. I will buy her the most expensive dress she wants from any designer she chooses." That was it. That was the moment my grief began to crystallize into a cold, hard diamond of rage. It's just a dress. She had never understood, and she had used her ignorance as a weapon. She wanted to replace something irreplaceable with something expensive, to erase my mother's legacy and overwrite it with her own money. Liam argued with her for another 10 minutes before hanging up, defeated. "She's offering to pay for it, Maria. She feels terrible." "She doesn't feel terrible, Liam. She feels inconvenienced," I said, my voice dangerously quiet. "Accidents don't look like this. I'm a textile expert. I know what an accidental tear looks like, and I know what a set stain looks like. This was intentional." "Why would she do that?" he asked, his face a mask of disbelief. He couldn't fathom that level of cruelty from his own mother. Because she hates that dress. She hates that it came from my mother and not from a boutique she approved of. She hates that it represents a part of my life she can't control. The next day, Brenda sent a check. A ridiculously large 5-figure check with "for a new dress" written in the memo line. I tore it into tiny pieces and threw it in the trash. This wasn't about money. This was about justice. My best friend, Chloe, came over that evening. She found me in my studio, staring at the dress, my eyes red and swollen. She took one look at the carnage, wrapped her arms around me, and let me cry until I had no tears left. Chloe, a social media manager, was pragmatic and sharp. When my sobs subsided, she looked at the dress with a forensic intensity. "This wasn't a party, Maria," she said firmly. "No charity gala ends with mud stains and shredded lace. She did something else, something she's lying about." That simple statement lit a fire in my mind. The lie was the key. We had to find out what really happened. A few days later, an opportunity presented itself. Liam's father, David, called. He sounded distraught. He had seen the dress before I picked it up and had been horrified. He confessed that Brenda had been acting strangely for weeks and he was deeply sorry. He mentioned that Brenda was out for the day at a realtor's conference and asked if Liam could come over to help him move a heavy filing cabinet in his office. Liam agreed, and I insisted on going with him. I told him I wanted to pick up the archival box lid, which we'd left behind. It was a flimsy excuse, but my mind was already working. While Liam and David were struggling with the cabinet upstairs, I told them I was going to wait in the car. But I didn't. Brenda drove a large, immaculate SUV, which she always left unlocked in their garage. My heart pounded as I slipped into the garage and opened the passenger side door. The car was pristine, as always, except for a few stray papers sticking out from the pocket of the passenger seat door. My hands shook as I pulled them out. They were receipts. A gas station receipt, a dry cleaning ticket, and underneath them, a folded piece of paper. It was an invoice. My blood ran cold as I read the letterhead. Ever After Photography, specializing in trash the dress photo sessions. My eyes scanned the details. The client name was Brenda. The date of the session was the day after her charity gala. The location was a place called Blackwood Creek, a rocky, wooded area about an hour out of town. The package she'd purchased was called the Deluxe Destruction Package, and it included a professional photographer, a bottle of cheap red wine for staining effects, and a choice of environmental hazards like mud puddles and thorny bushes. It was all there in black and white, the premeditated, calculated, gleeful destruction of my wedding dress. She hadn't borrowed it for a party. She had rented it out as a prop for her own sick, twisted fantasy. She had staged a photo shoot designed for the sole purpose of destroying it. The wine, the mud, the tear, it was all part of a script. The final line item on the invoice made me gasp. Additional fee for aggressive tearing of lace details, $250. She had paid extra to have it shredded. She had paid someone to help her tear my mother's love to pieces. I quickly took photos of the invoice with my phone, my hands trembling so badly the first few shots were blurry. I put the papers back exactly as I'd found them and slipped out of the garage, my mind a maelstrom of shock and white-hot fury. I got back in our car just as Liam and his father came back downstairs. On the drive home, I was silent. Liam asked if I was okay. "I'm fine," I said, the words tasting like poison. I wasn't fine. I was a woman who had just discovered the true, monstrous nature of her enemy. The grief was gone, burned away by the fire of this revelation. All that remained was a cold, clear, and absolute need for revenge. She hadn't just ruined a dress. She had declared war, and I was going to make sure she regretted it for the rest of her life. The discovery of the invoice changed everything. The betrayal was no longer a matter of opinion or interpretation. It was a fact, documented and paid for. For the first few days, I was paralyzed by the sheer audacity of Brenda's cruelty. I showed the photos of the invoice to Liam, and for the first time, he was speechless. The color drained from his face as he read the words "Deluxe Destruction Package" and "Aggressive Tearing." The last vestiges of his denial crumbled, replaced by a look of profound shame and horror. "I don't understand," he whispered, staring at my phone. "Who does this? Who would do something so evil?" "Your mother," I replied, my voice devoid of emotion. "Your mother would." That night, we had the first real reckoning of our marriage. He wanted to confront her immediately, to scream at her, to demand an explanation. But I stopped him. A screaming match would give her the satisfaction of a dramatic scene, allow her to play the victim, to twist the narrative. She would cry, she would apologize, she would say she didn't know what came over her. And in a few months, she would expect everything to be forgiven. I refused to give her that satisfaction. "No, Liam," I said, my voice steely. "A confrontation is what she wants. We're not going to do that. We're going to do this my way. And you have to decide right now whose side you are on. There is no middle ground here. It's me or it's her." He looked at me, saw the unyielding resolve in my eyes, and nodded. "You," he said without hesitation. "It's always been you. What do we do?" The first step was information. Chloe came over the next day, and the three of us huddled in my studio, which now felt like a war room. The ruined dress was still laid out on the table, a constant silent reminder of our mission. I showed Chloe the invoice. Her eyes widened, and a slow, wicked smile spread across her face. "Oh, she is going to burn for this," Chloe said with quiet glee. "This isn't just mean, this is sociopathic. Okay, Maria, what's the goal? Do we want to make her pay financially? Do we want to humiliate her? Do we want to destroy her reputation?" "All of the above," I said. "Brenda's entire world is built on her reputation. She's an event planner. Her success depends on people seeing her as tasteful, elegant, and trustworthy. She curates this perfect image of a loving matriarch and a community pillar. I want to shatter it. I want everyone to see the vindictive, jealous monster she really is. And I want to do it using the very thing she tried to destroy." Chloe's eyes lit up. "The photos, the trash the dress photos, we have to get them." That was the primary objective. The invoice was damning, but the photographic evidence would be irrefutable. I looked up Ever After Photography. It was a small, independent operation run by a photographer named Marco. His website was filled with edgy, dramatic photos of brides gleefully destroying their gowns. It seemed to be his niche. The first plan was simple. I could pretend to be a potential client and try to get information. But that was too risky. He might remember Brenda's name. Liam offered to call, pretending to be a husband wanting to book a surprise session for his wife, but we worried Brenda might have used a fake name for the booking, even if her real name was on the invoice. Then Chloe had a brilliant idea. As a social media manager for several high-end brands, she had connections. "I work with a lot of photographers," she said, tapping her chin. "Let me see if I know anyone who knows this Marco guy. The photography community is smaller than you think. Maybe we can get a back channel." While Chloe worked her magic, I focused on Brenda's business. Her company, Brenda's Bespoke Events, was her pride and joy. Her biggest client was the annual Founders Gala for our town's most exclusive country club, a massive, high-profile event she had been planning for a decade. It was the crown jewel of her career, the event that cemented her status as the town's premier planner. It was scheduled to take place in 2 months. That became our deadline. That became our stage. 2 days later, Chloe called me, her voice buzzing with excitement. "Bingo," she said. "I found a connection. My friend used to assist for Marco. She said he's a bit of a gossip and loves to brag about his crazy clients. Apparently, he was so weirded out by the mother of the groom trashing the dress session that he's been talking about it to everyone." This was better than I could have hoped for. He remembered her. He thought the situation was bizarre. This gave us an opening. Chloe's friend agreed to reach out to Marco, not mentioning us, but simply saying she'd heard a wild story and was curious. Our hope was that Marco, eager to share his strange tale, would be willing to talk. Meanwhile, Liam did some digging of his own. He looked into his mother's finances. He knew she was often careless with money, always chasing the next status symbol. He discovered she had taken out a significant business loan a few years ago to upgrade her office and brand, and that a large balloon payment was coming due in 3 months. Her business wasn't as rock solid as she pretended it was. It was vulnerable. My job was the most painful. I began the painstaking process of documenting the damage to the dress. I treated it like an artifact at the museum. I took hundreds of high-resolution photographs of every tear, every stain, every missing pearl. I wrote a detailed conservation report, using precise, technical language to describe the nature of the damage. I noted the force required to create such tears, the chemical composition of the mud, the abrasion of the silk fibers. It was a cold, clinical autopsy of my mother's love. Each photo I took, each sentence I wrote, fueled my resolve. This document would be my testimony. A week later, Chloe's plan paid off. Marco, the photographer, had eagerly shared the story with her friend. He confirmed it was Brenda, the mother-in-law, and he said the whole thing was creepy. He described how she had seemed to take a vicious pleasure in destroying the dress, laughing as she stomped on it in the mud and ripped the lace with her bare hands. And then, the jackpot. He mentioned he still had the photos. He kept all his client galleries on a password-protected site for a year. Now we had a target. We had the motive, the evidence of the crime, and we knew where the proof was hidden. The next step was to get that proof. Chloe, ever the strategist, came up with a plan that was both simple and audacious. "We don't need to hack him or trick him," she said. "We just need to give him a reason to give us the photos himself. We need leverage." And looking at the file I was compiling, the invoice, the financial records Liam had found, and my own detailed report on the dress, she smiled. "And I think we have everything we need to create it." The negative was developed. It was time to make a print. With all the pieces in place, it was time to construct the trap. Our stage was set, the upcoming Founders Gala at the country club. It was Brenda's biggest event of the year, a night where the town's wealthiest and most influential people would be gathered in one room. It was her moment to shine, to demonstrate her impeccable taste and flawless execution. It was the perfect place to orchestrate her downfall. Our plan had 3 phases. Phase 1, acquire the photos. Phase 2, isolate the target. Phase 3, the public reveal. Phase 1 was Chloe's masterpiece of social engineering. We couldn't risk approaching the photographer, Marco, directly as ourselves. He might get spooked and contact Brenda. Instead, Chloe created a fake online persona, a freelance journalist named Jessica Thorne, who was writing a feature article for a popular wedding blog about unconventional wedding traditions. Chloe built a convincing digital footprint for Jessica, a professional-looking portfolio website, a LinkedIn profile, and a few social media accounts seeded with generic posts about wedding trends. Then, Jessica reached out to Marco via email. She praised his unique niche of trash the dress photography and said she'd heard from an industry source that he had recently done a very unusual session, one involving a mother-in-law. She explained that this was a fascinating angle for her article on how family dynamics play out in wedding traditions. She asked if he would be willing to do an anonymous interview about the experience, and, if the client consented, perhaps share a few of the photos to be featured in the article. Marco, flattered by the attention and eager for publicity, took the bait. He replied within hours, saying he'd love to be featured. He confirmed the story of the crazy mother-in-law and said it was one for the books. Chloe, as Jessica, played her part perfectly, expressing fascination and sympathy for his position. Now for the hook. Chloe wrote back. "This is an incredible story. However, my editor is a stickler for verification. Before we proceed, I would need to discreetly confirm the details with the client to ensure we have her permission to discuss the session, even anonymously. Would you mind sharing the client's name and the password to the online gallery so I can ensure all my facts are straight before the interview? It will all be handled with the utmost confidentiality." It was a gamble. We were asking him to break his client's privacy. But we were betting on his ego, his desire for publicity, and the fact that he found Brenda just as strange as we did. The bet paid off. An hour later, an email from Marco landed in Chloe's inbox. It contained Brenda's full name, the date of the session, and the password to the online gallery. I held my breath as Chloe typed the password into the website. A gallery of images loaded onto the screen. My stomach lurched. There she was, Brenda, wearing my mother's dress. She was smiling, a wide, predatory grin on her face as she poured a bottle of red wine down the front of the bodice. The next photo showed her stomping on the hem in a muddy puddle, laughing maniacally. Another showed her yanking at the lace on the sleeve, her face contorted in a mask of pure, unadulterated glee. It was worse than I had ever imagined. This wasn't just destruction, it was a ritual of hatred. Without a word, Chloe downloaded every single high-resolution image. Phase 1 was complete. Phase 2, isolate the target. For the next month, we laid the groundwork. Liam played his part as the dutiful, oblivious son. He told his mother that I was still devastated, but that I had accepted her apology and her check. We cashed it, but put the money aside, untouched. He explained that I was throwing myself into my work to cope and didn't want to discuss the dress anymore. This was crucial. It lulled Brenda into a false sense of security. She believed her secret was safe, that her money had smoothed everything over, and that I was too weak to challenge her. She went back to her life, focusing all her energy on planning the gala, basking in the praise of her clients and friends. She thought she had won. Meanwhile, my role was to create the centerpiece of our revenge. I took the most damning photo of Brenda, the one of her laughing as she tore the lace, and had it professionally enlarged to the size of a movie poster. The quality was so high you could see the manic glint in her eyes. I then took my detailed conservation report, the one that clinically documented the intentional damage, and had it printed and bound into several elegant-looking booklets, like programs for an art exhibit. I also made a large foam core display board featuring the Invoice from the photographer with the deluxe destruction package and aggressive tearing lines highlighted in red. Chloe, using her social media expertise, was building the delivery system. She compiled a list of every single person on the gala's guest list, all of the town's most prominent figures. She found their email addresses, their social media handles, and in some cases, the contact information for local media outlets they were connected to. She prepared a digital package, a link to a private, password-protected webpage she built, where she would upload all the photos, a scanned copy of the invoice, and a PDF of my conservation report. A full dossier of Brenda's crime, ready to be deployed at the click of a button. Phase 3, the main event. The plan for the night of the gala was precise. The country club ballroom was a large, opulent space with a stage at one end and two massive projection screens on either side, which Brenda used to display a slideshow of photos from past galas. Liam, as her son, had an all-access pass to the event setup. He would be our inside man. The day before the gala, Liam went to the venue under the guise of helping his mother with some last-minute details. While she was busy directing florists and caterers, he went to the AV booth. He told the technician that his mom had a special surprise video she wanted to play during her speech and gave him a USB drive. On the drive was a single, high-resolution image, the photo of Brenda gleefully ripping the lace. He told the tech that when Brenda walked on stage and said the words, "A night to remember," he was to switch the display on both screens from the rolling slideshow to this one image. The tech, assuming it was a sweet family surprise, readily agreed. The final piece was the dress itself. I couldn't bear to let it be the center of attention again, but its ghost had to be present. So I took a dressmaker's mannequin and draped it with the ruined gown. I arranged the torn fabric, highlighted the wine stain, and let the shredded sleeves hang like broken wings. It was a tragic, silent witness. We would bring it with us, concealed in a garment bag, and reveal it at the perfect moment. We were no longer just seeking justice. We were staging a production. And Brenda was the star of the show. The night of the Founders' Gala arrived, cold and clear. I felt a strange calm settle over me, the kind that comes when you have a plan so meticulous that there's no room left for nerves. Liam and I dressed in our formal wear, a united front. In the back of our car, covered in a black garment bag, was the mannequin bearing the martyred dress. We had enlisted two of Liam's trusted friends to help us bring it inside through a service entrance, telling them only that it was a surprise for his mom. We arrived at the country club and handed the mannequin off, instructing them to keep it hidden in a back office until we gave them the signal. Then, Liam and I walked into the ballroom. It was exactly as Brenda had designed it, a sea of glittering gowns, tuxedos, and the clinking of champagne glasses. Brenda was in her element, flitting from table to table, accepting compliments, her face aglow with self-satisfaction. She was wearing a sleek, ridiculously expensive silver gown, looking every bit the queen of her domain. She spotted us and glided over, her smile wide and artificial. "Maria, you came. I'm so glad you're feeling better." She air-kissed me, her perfume cloying. "You look lovely, and Liam, darling, you're so handsome." "You've outdone yourself, Mom," Liam said, his voice perfectly even. "The place looks incredible." "Only the best for my clients," she beamed, before being whisked away by the club president. We found our seats at the family table with David, who gave me a warm, if slightly sad, smile. He had no idea what was about to unfold. The dinner service was interminable. I picked at my food, my eyes constantly scanning the room, tracking Brenda's movements, watching the AV booth, running through the plan one last time. Chloe was at home, poised at her computer, waiting for my text. The guest list was open on her screen, the email drafted and ready to send. Finally, after dessert, the club president went on stage to thank everyone for coming and to introduce the woman who made it all possible, Brenda. As she walked to the podium amidst a round of thunderous applause, I felt my heart begin to pound. This was it. She began her speech, her voice smooth and practiced. She thanked the board, the staff, the donors. She spoke of community, of tradition, of the importance of creating beautiful memories. The slideshow of smiling faces from past events played on the giant screens behind her. I saw Liam discreetly take out his phone under the table. Then Brenda raised her glass. "I am so proud of what we accomplished together, year after year," she declared, her voice ringing with false modesty. "Let us all work to make this a year full of joy, success, and above all, beauty. I promise you, this will be a night to remember." That was the cue. Liam hit send on the text to the AV tech. A split second later, the images on the two massive screens behind Brenda changed. The rolling slideshow vanished, replaced by a single, crystal-clear, 20-foot-high photograph. Brenda, in my mother's wedding dress, a look of ecstatic, vicious glee on her face as she tore the lace sleeve with her bare hands. A collective gasp swept through the ballroom. A confused murmur rippled through the crowd. Brenda, blinded by the stage lights, hadn't seen the change yet. She smiled, waiting for the applause, but it never came. Instead, the murmurs grew louder. People were pointing. Confused, she half-turned to see what everyone was looking at. Her face froze. The color drained from it, leaving a pasty, gray mask of horror. Her smile collapsed, her mouth falling open in a silent O. She was paralyzed, exposed, her ugliest moment magnified for her entire world to see. As she stood there, frozen in shame, I gave Liam a nod. He texted his friends. At the same moment, I stood up and walked calmly toward the stage. The room was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. All eyes were on me, then on the screens, then on the mortified woman at the podium. Just as I reached the steps of the stage, the doors to the ballroom swung open. Liam's two friends wheeled in the mannequin, pulling off the black garment bag to reveal the ruined dress itself. Another wave of gasps went through the room. The physical evidence was now present, a silent, tragic testament to the crime depicted on the screens. I took the microphone from the podium. Brenda was still standing there, sputtering, unable to form words. I turned to the audience. "Good evening," I said, my voice clear and steady. "For those of you who don't know me, I am Maria, Brenda's daughter-in-law. The dress you see on the screens and on the mannequin here was my wedding dress. It was handmade for me by my late mother. It was the most precious thing I owned." I paused, letting the words sink in. Brenda asked to borrow it for what she called a costume party. She returned it like this. I gestured to the ruined gown. She claimed it was an accident, a spilled glass of wine, a snag on a chair. She even gave me a generous check to replace it. I looked directly at Brenda, whose face was now streaked with tears of humiliation. But it wasn't an accident. Brenda hired a photographer to stage a trash the dress photo shoot. She paid him extra for, and I quote, aggressive tearing of lace details. She did this out of jealousy and spite. As I spoke, a final text was sent. Miles away, Chloe hit send. An email blasted out to every single person on the guest list. The subject line, the truth behind Brenda's bespoke events. Inside was a link to the webpage containing the entire gallery of photos, the invoice, and my detailed conservation report. Phones began to buzz and light up across the ballroom as the evidence was delivered directly into their hands. I placed my bound reports and a copy of the invoice on the podium in front of Brenda. "This is not about money," I said, my voice ringing with authority. "This is about character. The person who plans your most beautiful moments, your weddings, your anniversaries, is a person who finds joy in destroying them." I turned and walked off the stage. Liam met me at the bottom, took my hand, and we walked out of the ballroom without looking back. Behind us, we left a scene of utter social carnage. A silent, stunned audience, a ruined reputation, and a cruel woman left alone on a stage, illuminated by the giant image of her own monstrousness. The main event was over. The aftermath of the gala was swift and brutal. We didn't stick around to watch the fallout, but we heard about it from every conceivable source. David called Liam the next morning. He wasn't angry with us. His voice was heavy with a weary sadness and resignation. He said Brenda had a complete meltdown after we left. The club president had to escort her out through a back exit while the guests, stunned and horrified, left in droves. The gala, her crowning achievement, had ended in disgrace before the coffee was even served. The story spread through our town like wildfire. Chloe's email had been a masterstroke. By providing irrefutable, documentary proof, she had preempted any attempt Brenda could make to spin the story or paint me as a hysterical liar. No one could deny the evidence of the photos or the cold, hard numbers on the invoice. People forwarded the email to their friends. The local society blogger wrote a scathing, albeit anonymous, piece about a local event planner's shocking act of familial sabotage. Brenda's business, Brenda's Bespoke Events, imploded within a week. Her phone, which once rang constantly with high-profile clients, went silent. 4 of her upcoming weddings and 3 major corporate events canceled their contracts, all citing a loss of confidence in her character. The country club, her most prestigious client, informed her that her decade-long tenure as the planner for the founders' gala was over. They were exercising the morality clause in her contract. The balloon payment on her business loan was due, and with her income stream vaporized, she had no way to pay it. Within 2 months, she was forced to declare bankruptcy, her company dissolved, her reputation in tatters. She tried to fight back, of course. At first, she sent Liam a barrage of hysterical, rambling texts, accusing me of being a vindictive monster who had set her up. She claimed the photos were fake, that I had framed her. But the lie was too big, the evidence too overwhelming. Liam blocked her number. Then came the attempts at manipulation. She showed up at our house unannounced one evening. I saw her car pull up through the window and locked the door. She banged on it for 10 minutes, sobbing and begging for Liam to come out, to just talk to her. We sat in our living room in silence until she finally gave up and left. Her last-ditch effort was to try and win David to her side, to have him pressure us into a reconciliation. But David, for the first time in their marriage, refused to be her accomplice. He was a quiet man, but he was a man of principle. He told her that what she had done was indefensible and that she had to face the consequences of her actions alone. Their marriage, already strained by her narcissism, fractured completely. 6 months later, they separated. David moved into a small apartment downtown, and Brenda was left alone in her oversized house. A pariah in the community she had worked so hard to dominate. As for Liam and me, the experience forged our bond into something stronger than steel. He had stood by me unequivocally and chosen our future over his past. It wasn't easy for him to cut ties with his mother, but he recognized the poison she represented. We focused on building our own life, free from her shadow. We started going to therapy together to process the trauma and betrayal, and it brought us even closer. The dress still hangs on the mannequin in my studio. I've made no attempt to repair it. In a way, it has been transformed. It's no longer just a symbol of my mother's love. It's also a symbol of my own strength, a testament to the fact that I refuse to let cruelty and jealousy win. Sometimes I look at it and I feel a pang of the original grief, but it's quickly replaced by a sense of peace. Justice, I've learned, is its own form of conservation. It preserves your dignity. Brenda lost everything she cared about: her status, her business, her husband, and her son. She tried to destroy a symbol of my past, and in doing so, she obliterated her own future. She learned the hard way that some threads, once cut, can never be respun. My mother taught me to build beautiful things with needle and thread. Brenda taught me that sometimes, the most important thing you can do is learn how to skillfully and completely pull everything apart.